you'd wait for people at train stations, and then you'd slowly pick them off, and then that was then about sort of inflicting as much pain as possible, and then obviously coming away, and you'd class that as a victory at the time. So I actually initially became supportive of the extreme right wing at just 15. I came from a working class background. Mum and Dad were strong socialists, trade unionists. They were very much about sort of, they would do anything for the working class. But for myself, I actually was given a leaflet outside my school gates. It was the story of a mum who basically walked into an IRA bomb explosion and then got killed. And at the end of the leaflet it said, if you think this is wrong, do something about it. And I felt like I just had to do something to try and stop, violence and terrorism. But that was the open door then to 20 years involvement in the extreme right wing. The initial sort of 6 months period was definitely like a grooming period, where the individual recruiter got to know about me and my personal story. He found out that my mum was dying of cancer, so he used that as an open door for sort of bringing in the type of racism. So that he said, if they got into power, the far right, then they'd ban all overseas aid, and all that money then would be invested in the NHS. I absolutely bought that line, hook, line and sinker. So, some days I'll be looking after Mum and it was really intense and really, really difficult and, emotional. And then other days I'd be on a march, absolutely causing chaos, because it was the only way I could release my anger and my frustration. And then after that period, sadly when Mum died, and then that anger and hatred and frustration had to go somewhere. And for me, the far right gave me that outlet. When you're in an extreme neo-Nazi organisation, there's different levels to the organisation. At the bottom, you have foot soldiers. We all start there. I started there, selling papers, stickering. Above that, you have people who become activists and it becomes their life. You get up in the morning, you want to go out, you want to do something for the cause that day. Above that, you'll have sort of local organisers, and these are the people who focus on the local picture. Above that are those who see on a regional picture. They might even look at trying to relocate people to certain bits of that neighbourhood. And above that, you've got those who are what I'd call in the inner cadre, the ones who are like the visionaries. Those are the ones who have the international contacts. Those are the ones who see this as a global struggle to save the white world. From the minute I got up in the morning, I was making judgment calls on individuals, on the colour of the skin, their religion, the job that they did. You get involved in anything from demonstrations, threats of intimidation and violence of people who you thought of were political enemies. On the area I lived in Birmingham, we'd actually masked up and we put the burning cross in a black gentleman's house, and we were rattling the doors back and front, waiting for this family to come out. And this was all about intimidating people off the area where we lived at the time. For us, we become very anti sort of establishment and anti-government. So I took a very anti-police line, anti-politician line, hated social workers and teachers because I felt they were brainwashing young people. And, we attended demonstrations in London, Manchester, Liverpool, and it always ended in violence. You'd wait for people at service stations, or you'd wait for people at train stations, and then you'd slowly pick them off. You would always wait to tackle those sort of 3 or 4 stragglers, and then that was then about sort of inflicting as much pain as possible. And you'd class that as a victory at the time. So when we look at the finance of the far right, so sometimes the far right will basically just live on donations. Sometimes you might be asked for a percentage of your wage. Sometimes the far right will get involved in criminality. This can include anything from dogfighting, drug dealing, extortion. Money was never an issue within the far right, and they gave you everything you need to survive. But as a recourse for that, then you have to pay back. You have to give them the loyalty, and when they call, you very much had to go. For me to come to my senses and obviously realise that this wasn't the place to be, there was like a 3-year period. Initially, I was married at the time, and my wife hated politics. She always thought she could save me and, try and stop me doing the things I was doing. eventually it came to a point where she said, well, I want you to walk away from Combat 18 or I'm going to divorce you. And I thought, oh, she won't do it. She always comes back and, goes away and comes back. But this time she never did. She walked away, left the house, and then that for me was the first real chink in my armour when I thought, am I really involved in something which I'm going to give up all these things which obviously, you love and care about? And that really sort of put a sort of shot across my sort of ship, really. And I thought, right, okay, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? But then it was the violence, the amount of violence I've not just witnessed but sadly participated in is horrific. And when I look at the things that, I've been involved in, the harm I've done to others, the physical abuse and, the attacks I've gone through, being put in hospital, I just thought, what are we doing this for? Because all you ended up is just hurting each other, and you're not creating a better country, you're not making anything safer. And then eventually there was a black gentleman in Birmingham city centre, and there was about 15 lads racially abusing this black gent. And when I looked around, I saw his wife and his children absolutely crying their eyes out in the bus stop close by. And so I stepped in the middle and I said, to get to him, you've got to get through me. And I actually explained, he isn't the enemy. I said, the state is the enemy. They're the ones with the power. Thankfully, we got the gent, his children and his wife into a black taxi and got them out of there. And where everybody else was walking off and they were a bit disappointed because they'd smelt blood and they wanted to fight and cause trouble, I just walked away completely numb. And I just thought, I need to get out of this world, I need to stop what I'm doing. And it took a good couple of years then for me to then plan how I walked away from this, because it was everything. They knew where I worked, they were the only friends I had because you couldn't have friends outside of politics. When I left the far right, I literally decided to come to London, and I literally ate my way through every meal in Soho you could think of. So any food you could think of from a foreign country, I literally worked my way through it because I couldn't eat, anybody else's sort of ethnic community's food, because when you're in the far right you can't give money to be from a different community. So I literally sat there for 2 years and ate everything I could. I eventually met a new partner, got married, had kids, but I always felt like I wanted to put something back into the community. I went on a Prevent training session, and at the very end of it, the guy said, I really need some help to talk about this and promote what Prevent does. Prevent is a government programme which seeks to reduce extremism through offering a safe space to talk. Often people will get put through for Prevent by school teachers, people who care. So this is about protection. Somebody will then, if they meet the criteria for Prevent, will sit down and talk to somebody like myself. They'll have conversations about why they feel the way they do. And the great thing is about Prevent, it's a non-criminal space. So this isn't about getting you into trouble, this is about protecting individuals who need that support. Big thing is then you've now got a doorway away from extremism, where myself and other formers know it's going to destroy your life, it's not going to make it any better. At the moment we actually have a charity which is called Exit Hate. Now Exit Hate is run and set up by formers. We don't judge, we simply offer support. Now if you're in a part where you actually think that you want to leave an extremist environment, then you can come and talk to us. I think the events around Southport took us all by shock. When we spoke to people who were supportive of the riots and the civil unrest, they felt that they were going out and they were releasing some sort of anger and rage and frustration. But the reality of what they were doing, in many cases, arson, was actually putting people's lives at risk. And when that was explained to them, and they saw that in the reality on the video footage of across the country, that reality kicked in. I think the first thing you need to think about is your support of extremism, and this could be any form of extremism, is it a positive or negative on your life? Now, every single person we've ever spoken to has always says that involvement and support has had a negative impression on their life. So come away, walk away, and let's look for solutions in a different way.